Today we are going to have hopefully very robust conversations for development. We would like to hear from all generations and hence the intergenerational dialogues.
I was requested to first begin by maybe sharing my thoughts about June 16, and I thought, let me just find words that would be befitting for this occasion. And I came across this very interesting poem, Youth Day, the day to be remembered, never to be forgotten, the day to be written on our diaries, that even a grandchild that is not born would know about this day.
So, if 80% of my population does not agree with it, bomb it. A statement said by an extreme optimist in his view of where the problem lies in our society. At first, I viewed this as rather a radical statement. Now I see maybe this gentleman was truly onto something. A South Africa I would want to live in. Upon settling down to write this, I was at a loss for words, something that does not happen too often. Not because the South Africa I inhabit is one I am proud of, but rather because I have been given an opportunity to speak, air my opinions, in a society that has so often refused to listen, but then is shaken when a revolution is near.
And I'd like to now call upon Reverend Mzwandile Molo from the Methodist Church. I did say that it's a combination of the young and not so young.
I was asked to share my reflections on the South Africa that I would like to live in. Obviously, what frames it is the understanding of the month that we're in. It is the month of June 16. So I want to start by affirming to us the spirit that I believe drove those who stood up some 40 years ago. A spirit of non-conformity, a spirit of daring to dream differently, and a spirit of having the conviction not only to act on that which you believe, but the readiness to pay the price.
My point about South Africa that I want to live on, a better South Africa, it's all about, like, the first important point for me is tolerance. Like, we need to tolerate each other. We need to understand that we are all different at some point.
The South Africa that I would like is a sustainable South Africa. In other words, a South Africa where the needs of the present don't come at the price of the future. We talk a lot in South Africa about the historically disadvantaged. What we are busy doing at the moment, worldwide, not only in South Africa, is creating the future disadvantage. They will not be able to live in the way that we live because of the fact that we have lived carelessly now.
I've impacted on over 10,000 young people through my career expos, currently having created space for over 500 young entrepreneurs who drive change across SA for them to run sustainable businesses. And that's how I'm driving change.
Why do we want change? It's a very simple thing. You just scan around. You look across the various threats of society to say, what is the situation currently? So you need to be aware of the poverty that prevails amongst the poor in the country.
The way I like to see it as we are a human capital accelerator. So let's have a discussion about what that means. So my intentions of what I want to do with this organization is that I must be able to enable any children to do whatever he or she wants to so that he can reach the dream.
The South Africa I want to live in is a South Africa where a young girl would be able to engage in a field such as engineering without the fear of being neglected or rejected just for the mere fact that they are a girl.
South Africa has evolved and changed dramatically, but it is still a developing country. And as much as we would like to believe that we should focus on things like getting faster internet or building new shopping malls, we are nowhere near giving every citizen their basic rights. Most of us interact with people in our own social circles, and we live in a bubble that focuses on enabling us to live our own better lives. When we focus on the country as a whole, we realize that there are more pressing issues at hand.
it becomes important for us to appreciate that the future always belongs to the youth, and they have a greater stake in it, and they have got the greater task and the burden to actually shape it.
I have a daughter. So the dream that I have for her in South Africa is to shine in her black skin, to wear her crown with pride, and to blossom as a young woman in the future, and also not to be ashamed to just speak her truth.
I think I would want to live in a South Africa where there's accountability. But then it also raises the question, who is this person that needs to be accountable? Because how can I expect Jacob Zuma to be accountable when I'm not accountable for the resources that I have? How do I use the water that I have? How do I use the electricity? How do I use the material, the books that I have? How do I use that? So I first need to be the guy who's accountable.
Before we can moan and point at fingers to the things that we don't have, how much are we taking advantage of the little that we have? You know, this cell phone, I wonder how many people understand the power of this thing. When I went to school, I had to go and sit in the city library for hours. They kicked me out. I had to go and look for the next library. You don't have to do that today. You don't have to.
I'm very disheartened by what this young lady said earlier on stage. The fact that she feels like, although she's a young South African, she's not the face of young South Africa. My story, for example, I moved to Joburg when I was 3 to live with my grandmother, who was a domestic worker, and I was raised by Jewish people. And right now, I have a white sister and a black sister, both under the age of 14. And I feel like my black sister's story, or even my story, doesn't make me more of the face of South Africa than her story.
I'm actually quite inspired by all the conversation that's coming up about education. And I think that we've missed the plot a bit, because there's a big part of our community and our country that we've missed out, and it's our kids with disabilities. And I know that a lot of the time people are speaking about inclusive education, and that's all well and good. But what about accessible education? Because it doesn't help taking a child with a disability and putting them in a typically developing child's classroom when they have no way to access the curriculum, when they don't have a way to have a say in that classroom.
And talk is cheap. I don't believe in just talking. Talking with action takes us somewhere. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure for me to come and serve. I'm one of the proud ambassadors of the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital Trust.